Let's talk about how you know them. Describe the dynamic between the two brothers in prison. You said that Eric was the weaker of the two. You've said that in the past. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura. I was locked up with them in the LA County Jail back in 1993, and we were both in solitary together. We were actually on the tier where O.J. Simpson eventually came in, and they were right next to me. They were cellmates. So I spoke to them just about every day for 11 months. For about 2 months, Eric was there, and then there was an alleged escape attempt, or they were talking about escapes. And they moved Eric out of that tier and they separated the brothers. So it was just me and Lyle for, the rest of that time. And like I said, it was about 11 months. So I got to know them fairly well, and I mean, the dynamic between the two of them, they were very close, no doubt about it. Lyle was the older of the two. He seemed to be, more in control. He was the one that, spoke up most of the time. Eric was more to himself. I noticed that. And Eric was more troubled. He would speak about things. He asked my advice about certain things, as Lyle did, because they were in trial during that time, too, the first trial that they had that ended in a hung jury. So, they asked me questions, but I think, they had Leslie Abramson was their lawyer at the time. And I think she probably told them, be careful, if you discuss any of the case with other people on the tier. But we got very close. And I will tell you this, Laura, I believe 100% that they were abused. There's no question about it. Lyle especially opened up to me about, incidents that he had in a way. And, he talked about his mother, got tears in his eyes when he talked about his mother. But he had a vengeance for his dad. He really did. Like there was some deep, dark stuff going on there with his father.
Well, what did he say? Tell us what he said to you to have you say that.
Well, he said my father was mean. He was very demanding. He didn't spare the rod. He would get physical with me all the time. And he said, Michael, he would go like this. He was abusive. He was very abusive. And it started when I was young. And the way he said it, I got the feeling, because, I didn't want to ask him, and get into him. But I knew there was more than just getting beat. There was something more to that. And then when he said it, a lot of times his eyes, he would tear up. And honestly, too, I said, Lyle, listen, I came from the street, but that was a pretty brutal thing you did. He said, I was just scared. I was scared of my mom and dad. And I even asked him, I said, didn't your mom protect you? And he said, no, she didn't protect me. And so, he opened up in that way. So again, 100% I believe that they were abused and molested. And I think it's coming out now. I heard that there was a letter that Eric had written well before this incident when he was younger that talked about the abuse. And of course, we're seeing other things that are coming out now about that with other people involved.
Right. Well, that letter, of course, is a very big part of this push to get resentenced. We're going to see what happens later next month. I got to ask you, how were the brothers treated by other prisoners? I mean, were you guys friends? It sounds like you guys started a rapport. I mean, the fact that they told you so much, or that Lyle did, and Eric talking about what they had been through, it sounds like you were friends. But how did other people treat them?
Well, it was funny. I mean, they weren't around any other inmates because we were locked down in that unit. But when we would go for a visit, when you're in solitary, you're shackled and handcuffed. So you have to walk through the rest of the jail. We walked through the jail hospital and everything. And a lot of guys were unkind to them. Hey, you parent killers, we're going to get you, and so on and so forth. So they weren't, they were kind of abusive. But I'll tell you what happened. After they moved Eric out, myself and Lyle would go down to the visits, and he got a lot of visits, not only from his attorneys, but from relatives and friends. And I had a lot of visits also. And so I was young then. I was in my late 30s, and we were both white guys in a jail that's mostly, minorities. And when we started walking together, they thought I was one of the Menendez brothers, and they were saying, we're going to kill you both. And, they were kind of coming at me. So it was funny. I told the correctional officer, and I told Lyle, I said, hey, I have enough trouble being Michael Franzese. I don't need to be a Menendez brother. So please don't walk us together.
Right.
And they didn't after that. But, I think that was, I don't think they had trouble, after that, because the jails were a little different than the prisons.
Right.
But that was the initial reaction
to
them.
Do you think that they were treated that way because of their wealth? I mean, certainly the crime, of course, was so jarring. But do you think their wealth played into that, too?
I do. I mean, look, these two boys were very unsophisticated. I mean, they certainly did the wrong thing after the fact, you know. I mean, obviously they weren't criminals in that degree, you know, until this thing happened. They weren't criminals, they weren't street kids. So they did the wrong thing. I mean, they kind of, you know, flaunted their wealth around, and I think that obviously that wasn't a smart thing to do.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.